Live from the Panera Studios, it's the Reading with Robin show, brought to you each week by my friends at Panera Bread, where it's food as it should be, where 100% of their food is 100% clean. There's a Panera near you. Why not stop by for their delicious superfruit smoothies or a colorful and filling salad? It's always a perfect cozy spot to meet friends. Also great for business meetings or after-school snacks. All at Panera Bread. Reading with Robin also brought to you by the Point Street Reading Series. Third Tuesday of every month, it's the place to be in Providence with 5 fabulous authors coming to read each and every month. To find out who's reading next, please visit Point Street Reading Series on Facebook. And now, enjoy the show. As I love to say on Reading with Robin, debut alert. This is pub day for one of my favorite new books. It's called The Futures. Anna Pitoniak is the author. I read this book, I cannot believe, I think it was in July. It was so long ago. Anna is an editor at Random House, and she graduated from Yale in 2010, so like 2 seconds ago. Mm-hmm. And it feels like it, right? And
it does.
A lot's happened in that time span, although
sure has.
It seems kind of recent to me. And she lives in New York City, and we have so much to talk about. I am thrilled to have you here on Reading with Robin. Welcome to the show, and again, happy Pub Day. It's a big day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Oh, well, I remember just to tell the audience, I got this book and I said, I know that name. And you know the story, obviously, because I was sending your publicist information. I was like, wait a minute, Anna, we met years ago, or at some, it was several years ago.
It was several years ago.
You had just started out in publishing, and I just remembered your name. And I sat down that afternoon and just soaked up this book, which Courtney Sullivan calls compelling and memorable, unflinchingly honest, and huge fan of Courtney, so really there it was. But I just remember spending the day with your book, and it feels like so long ago. So for you, what is it like, this whole, you're in the book world, and then to have your own come out, what's that like?
It's a wonderful feeling. It's pretty surreal, to be honest. As a book editor, I've been on the other side of the equation so many times now. I've seen books go from rough manuscripts to finished copies, and I've watched, our publicity and marketing teams come up with campaigns to launch them in the world, and, seen these books make their way into the hands of readers and bookshelves and on bookshelves and bookstores across the country. And it's always a very rewarding thing to witness that as an editor. And now to do it as a writer, it's even more thrilling and rewarding, I would say. It feels like a little surreal to have something that you've been working on for such a long time, and that for such a long time was really kind of private, and no one else in the world was paying attention to it. To now have it being out there is both a great feeling and, a little nerve-wracking at times because you can't help but wonder how people are going to respond. But working in book publishing, I know firsthand what a rare and privileged thing it is to, have your book published at all, because we have so many manuscripts come across our desk as editors every year that are really good, and the writing's really good, and they're very worthy, but there are only so many books a publishing house can take on and sign. So I feel incredibly lucky that my book is going to be out there in the world.
You must get so many, because I know that on this end of listening to readers and meeting so many writers, and at my events, people who want to write and want to talk to authors about their work. So on the editing side, certainly you see so much, and like you say, so much that's worthy, and it is to have it out there in the world and to have your book. And the cover is beautiful, the whole package. They just did a beautiful job with it.
Oh, thank you. I agree. They did a fantastic job.
Yeah, even if I didn't know you or the galley hadn't arrived, if I were out and about, this would jump into my hands. This absolutely is one of those books that I would have to pick up and say, what is the futures about? What could this be about? Now, when you started in publishing, was that your idea? You were writing, or I know I was reading in one of the articles, I think the wonderful Town and Country, which picked it like their winter's read. They talked about your journaling and when you started in the city and your mom suggesting that you take notes and, talk a little bit about that and if that was sort of the plan in the publishing world, or they were separate?
So I was an English major in college, but I didn't do a ton of creative fiction writing in college. I did some writing for the campus newspaper. I took a number of English classes that were more like literature classes, but I never saw myself as an aspiring novelist per se. But there were a combination of things that led me into writing this novel. One was, as you mentioned, the summer after I graduated from college and moved to New York City, my mom suggested to me that I should try keeping a journal of those first, couple of months or that first year in New York. She had made the same move when she was a young woman. She went straight from college to New York, and she said that she always regretted not having, a full account of what that time was like because it's such a strange and exciting and tumultuous transition. So I took her advice and I tried doing that.
Smart girl. Very
smart girl. I always listen to your mother. That's the moral of the story.
I have to agree with that, yeah.
But, I've never been a journal keeper in my life. It's just never been something that I've done. And when I tried to do this, I found the act of trying to keep a journal and record what was happening in the world around me to be very sort of stilted and artificial in a way. It was almost like I couldn't say what I was actually thinking on
even
the page.
Yourself.
Even to myself, if I was writing in my own voice. But, my mom had been right. It was a strange and exciting and tumultuous transition, and it was so much more so than I'd been anticipating. And maybe it's naive, looking back, but I really wasn't prepared for the magnitude of change from college to the real world. It was such a bigger and more shocking transition than I'd been expecting.
But how can you really plan for that?
I guess
give yourself a little break. I had such an amazing time. I mean, you graduated in 2010, so same age as my son, and I think that there's so much expected. Even the transition, certainly going into college from high school and knowing what that expectation is, but then you've been sort of in this cocoon and you're plunked out into whatever the real world, and nobody really understands what that's like. And so I think that was amazing that you took your mom's advice, smart, and then now to have this to look at. Fascinating, really.
It was a large part of the feeling was this sense that up until that point, there'd always been a sense of a plan or of the next thing that you're kind of supposed to do.
Sure.
And then once you've graduated, it's up to you. The decisions are yours to make at that point, which is exciting, but also a little terrifying. So, I wanted a way to kind of think about this and write about this, and I found myself kind of making note of these different observations and these feelings I was having. And I wanted a way to process it, and that eventually became the basis for, the fictional characters in the novel. At the same time as this, I was working in book publishing. I started off in a subsidiary rights position at Penguin, and then shortly after that moved into editorial at Random House. And working in publishing has been so great for so many reasons, but one of the biggest things was that it made me see that writing a novel, becoming a novelist, is not just a question of, being born with some brilliant talent. A lot of it is hard work, and a lot of it is revision, and, getting to work with writers, revising their manuscripts, understanding how much work went into that, made it seem like a more approachable thing. And I thought, maybe it's something I could give it a shot. I could try this.
Interesting.
So having not really written fiction before, I started, just kind of playing around with some of these ideas. And it took me a long time, and the first draft was so messy that it bears almost no resemblance to the final, novel that's sitting in my hands. But it was a way, and I found it was actually a really interesting and productive way to kind of write about these things that I'd been thinking about and noticing in those first months and that first year out of college.
And I don't know if people really appreciate how different a final, what we're holding in our hands and reading, how different that can look and how much revision. And it is such disciplined work, and it is so often romanticized. But the act of really sitting down and writing and having that patience and being open to listen. Now, what is it like? Because it's almost like, physician heal thyself when you're sitting with your editor. I am so fascinated by that dynamic and how that works. How do you detach a little from that editor's position?
So I think to be honest, it's almost impossible to edit yourself.
Sure.
Some people are probably better at it than others, but I think that, even though my full-time job is that I'm a book editor, I really don't think that, I was capable of editing myself in this book. Maybe in little ways, on a sentence level, but I had huge blind spots and huge things I didn't see about that. And, when I sat down and talked with my editor, Karina, and she pointed out these things, as soon as she said it, I was like, of course, how could I not have seen that? That's such a good point.
You're too close sometimes, right?
But you're too close, exactly. Yeah. I think you need that outside perspective to come in and, show you what's not working or what you need more of or what you need less of. So I think, as an editor, intellectually, I had appreciated the notion that everyone needs an editor, but it wasn't until I, worked as a writer and had this novel edited by someone else that I really, truly understood that and knew it to be true.
I can imagine, it's like letting another chef letting some other cook into their kitchen. Like, wait, no, we do things this way. No, this is the way it goes. I just find that dynamic is interesting, and being in the book world, being an editor. And on the phone, I'm speaking with Anna Pitoniak. Her brand new book, her debut novel, The Futures, hit shelves today, and it is Reading with Robin alert, and this is what I say, because I don't like to give too much away, but we'll talk about the story a bit, is that I love this book. You will love this book. I read it over the summer, and I could not wait to finally have an opportunity to speak with Anna, and you can also have an opportunity to meet her. Visit her website at annapitoniak.com. You can find her also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and she will be tonight at Barnes & Noble on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And tomorrow night, she will be at Savoy Bookshop near me-ish in Westerly, Rhode Island. I am going to try really hard to be there. That's at 6 p.m. And then you can go on the website and see, but you'll also be at R.J. Julia on the 19th, and then at Powerhouse in Brooklyn, which is awesome, on February 1st, and then here in Rhode Island on Tuesday, February 21st, at the Point Street Reading Series. So that's really exciting. Are you looking forward to a book tour?
I am. I'm excited about it. I feel like a little bit nervous about the public speaking aspect, reading your work aloud in front of an audience. It's an exciting thing, but we'll see. I'll have to do some deep breathing beforehand.
Absolutely, and then certainly at all of these events, you get to see people you haven't seen in a while, and then there's the hometown advantage in New York on the Upper East Side at Barnes & Noble, and so it's got to be amazingly overwhelming and all of that. So you know which section you want to read, or do you start at the beginning? Yeah.
I'm going to do a little more thinking about that over the weekend. I have a section in mind from the beginning that I think I'd like to read from. Having been to a number of these readings before, I find that it's generally good to stay on the short side, and allow plenty of time for conversation and Q&A. But I have something in mind. So we'll see.
Agree with that. I mean, I love to hear the background of the story, and if you want to talk about what was going on in 2008, how you decided to set the story there, and you talk about our couple, Evan and Julia, and a little bit about the story. So let's practice here, shall we?
Sure. Good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the idea to set the novel in 2008. When I graduated from college in 2010, the recession was still very much present and, a dominant factor in life in New York. The employment market was kind of sluggish, and the economy still wasn't completely back on its feet. And more than that, I really remember very vividly when the market crashed in the fall of 2008. It felt like it was one of those moments which don't come along that frequently where you really sense that you're living through a historical moment, and you know that things are changing in a really significant way. And there haven't been a ton of those in my lifetime. There was 9/11 when I was younger. Yeah. There was this, and there was the presidential election last year. And there are these moments when you know that one era is giving way to another. And I very much felt that in 2008, not least because a lot of my friends in college were planning to go work in finance and investment banking. And in some cases, they had jobs lined up for the next year at companies that when we woke up in the morning no longer existed because they'd gone off a cliff the previous night. Yeah. So that sense of destabilization and of the world changing so rapidly really made an impression on me, and I found myself thinking about it a lot. And then when we graduated, I had a lot of friends who still did go into finance, despite the fact that this fairly cataclysmic event had just happened. And I wanted, a way to kind of imagine myself into that world and to explore what it would be like to work in that world, to be exposed to such high-stakes deals and sometimes morally questionable decisions at such a young and impressionable age. I think that when you're 22 years old and right out of college, you don't necessarily have the strongest sense of yourself yet. You're still finding out who you are, and it's easy to be in a situation and to find yourself quickly getting in over your head, and
this is what happens. Yeah.
And then this is what happens. And that certainly happens in the character of Evan, who works at a hedge fund and finds himself caught up in this questionable deal at work.
You could see how it could happen, though. I mean, we did live through this time, but in reading it, and one of the blurbs on the book or on the press information from Karen Thompson Walker saying, "Tender and wise, the future feels like a true story," and that's really how it did. I did feel like I was reading an account, and just such compelling prose and all of that, but thinking, did this wait, I had to kind of think about it. And she says, Pitoniak's voice is stylish and authentic and perfect for exploring this rich territory. Youth and love in New York City. I mean, what a combo. So, but right, knowing, and like you say, being charged with such a heady situation at that age and in that circumstance and making some questionable choices or realizing how things will affect a long range effect and how to deal with the people and fallout and all of that. So that's what it really did feel like, a real account of that specific time and what was happening with that whole segment of population, and really lives were so changed. I mean, a lot of things were never the same for certain people after that.
Yeah,
time,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that in with similar principles in a different situation, Julia finds herself going through the same thing. She gets caught up in a situation where she, is unhappy at work, a little lonely, and feeling like she's drifting while the rest of her friends and her boyfriend Evan are finding themselves in their work or in their pursuits. And, she goes looking for an escape, and that winds up taking her down a road where things escalate very quickly. And I think for both Evan and Julia, the story is about how easy it winds up being to, betray themselves and to betray each other. When you're in the real world and your life is suddenly yours to make decisions about and to steer and to control, that means everything's on you, and that means that the mistakes you make might have a much bigger reverberation and effect. And I think this story is in large part about them learning the consequences of that.
Well, and that's the only way really to learn is sort of through it. And the good news when you're younger and see that people have gone through situations, and apologies can often go a long way. And then sometimes the other piece that is learned is like, well, stuff does happen, and hopefully we learn from it, don't make the same mistakes, or have enough time left to persevere and maybe make other decisions. And it's not all neatly as laid out as we hope it could be, or are sometimes falsely promised it will be. It really just makes you think. And I find books that center around that time of life fascinating, coming-of-age stories, whether they're teen coming-of-age stories or 20s, 30s, because we continue to come of age in some ways. So the book was just resonated with me. And I wonder, like, when you get so into a character and this relationship, and certainly the book, you finished it a long time ago, you turned it in, now it's out, but do you think about Julia and Evan in a different way now that you're surrounded by this book again in a different way?
It's funny. I did finish the book a while ago. It was probably about a year ago that I turned in the final draft of it. So I'll be honest, there was a stretch of time where, I didn't go back and reread it once I'd finished all the editing. And I think it's good because it allowed me to kind of let the book become separate from myself, which I think is an important thing to do when you're publishing a novel or any book, is to realize that whatever the world might think of your book, it's not a judgment on you. It's it's the book, which is a thing separate. And coming
Good
back
point.
to it now and thinking about it more and revisiting it, I feel a lot of tenderness for these characters. I think they are both deeply flawed people who make a lot of mistakes. When I really think about it, it makes me sad sometimes because I think, they really hurt each other, and the repercussions of what happens in the novel are serious in their lives. Yeah. But to me, they're very real people, and I couldn't make them real without writing those flaws and those mistakes and those moments of pain and sadness.
That's what makes it so compelling, because that's what we want to read, and that's another reason that it feels so real in reading them. But, yeah, I always wondered, and I think that's an interesting idea of the way you're explaining separating it. It's been a while, and then I wonder if as you're reading it, or as readers start to get their hands on it more and ask questions, if you think, I hadn't thought about that in a while.
Yeah.
Or, just also what the readers take from your book and what they give back to you and how they take ownership of the characters.
Yeah,
in the story
it's very interesting, especially because this book is sort of evenly split between the two characters. It's told from their alternating perspectives. It's been interesting to see how different readers have sided with different characters. Some people will tell me, I loved Julia and I thought Evan was a jerk. Other people will say exactly the opposite. They'll say they loved Evan and they thought Julia was a jerk.
Interesting, right?
And it's very interesting. And, it's not always exactly what I would have predicted. It's not like all the girls side with Julia and the guys side with Evan. It's more complicated than that. So I find that really interesting. And just to see people respond to it and say, it just, I got so frustrated on this page when they did this, or, I was so happy when this finally happened. To see people having that kind of emotional reaction, whether it's, one of happiness or frustration with these characters that you've written, it's actually very gratifying because that it's striking a chord with them in some way. And you never know.
It is surprising when you think, I figure this group might go that way, or what's going to resonate, and who maybe was in this business sector, had fallouts, dealings, kids that were working in the business, or what people bring to a story when they sit down with a book, what they already bring to that story, and how they're going to, what the takeaway is. And I'm so excited for readers to get their hands on The Futures. It's out today. Visit Anna's site at annapitoniak.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Which is your favorite platform?
Oh, my gosh. I like them all for different reasons. I spend a lot of time on Instagram because, it's easy to get sucked down these rabbit holes when someone has, a beautiful page. So
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So I'm certainly guilty of that.
Yeah, well, that just means you're human like one of us.
Exactly.
And before I let you go, one of your favorite books, either something you've read recently or something you're looking forward to that's coming out, for readers to look forward to or put on their list for 2017.
Oh, sure. Well, I will mention a couple of books, and I guess I'm biased in both cases because they are Random House books. But
well, they're great. We love Random House.
Yeah, and I truly love these books. One book that came out just before the holidays is an amazing biography of Queen Victoria by a writer named Julia Baird. It's called Victoria the Queen.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
It's so juicy. It's a total page-turner. It reads like a novel in the best sense. And I'm really looking forward to watching the new PBS TV series about Victoria, which premieres I think it premiered on January 15th. And,
great.
I think Julia's biography of Victoria is an excellent companion to that show. And
thank you. That's great to know. People are fascinated with that time period and these characters. So that's a great one.
The royals are a perennial, and I think, I watched The Crown right before the holidays and loved that.
Yeah.
And I think, also if you loved The Crown, this is the perfect book for you. Wonderful. And then another book that is on the horizon, it comes out in March, is a memoir by the New Yorker writer Ariel Levy.
I read it.
Called The Rules Do Not Apply. Yeah, so you know how great it is.
Such a fabulous book. I've been picking it everywhere. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like this searing jewel of a book that just I think is so wise and profound and moving and really sticks with you in a powerful way. So I will be recommending that book to everyone.
I am too. You can't miss it. It's because it's great pink and orange cover. The rules do not apply. I was just I emailed Jenny Hutt about it, and so she was going to get in touch. She is a great reader of memoir, and we like a lot of the same books. So I said, do you know about this one? The rules do not apply. No, I have to get it. So that was really cool. So
yes.
That'll be everywhere. Very exciting. Well, I'm glad that we're on the same page, and I look forward to seeing you at Point Street Reading Series in February. Have the best time tonight at Barnes & Noble on the Upper East Side, and for more event dates, visit AnnaPitoniak.com, and you'll see her schedule and get to go see her. But pick up the futures. You're welcome. That was to my readers. You're welcome, Anna. It was my pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Great. Enjoy.
Okay.